Here is our last section in Unit 7. I'm going to talk about the immune system. And this is a very, very brief overview. Probably the first thing we want to look at when we talk about the immune system is, what are pathogens? Pathogens are disease-producing agents. So it could be bacteria, protozoans, fungi, viruses, parasites. The background of this page is showing some pathogenic bacteria. Not all microorganisms are pathogens. And you know that some have a symbiotic relationship in the body. There are bacteria in the colon, there are bacteria on your skin that actually serve very useful purposes and are healthy and beneficial. But some of them are pathogens. Pathogens produce diseases, so that's the difference. Infectious diseases are any diseases that are caused by the presence of a pathogen. Non-communicable diseases are diseases that are inherited or else caused by exposure to chemicals or toxins, or else caused by poor nutrition. Exposure to chemical or toxins would be anything in the environment, diseases that are caused from smoking or excessive drinking. Those are different toxins, as well as other chemicals and toxins in the environment. Now we're going to look at two different kinds of immunity. The first one we're looking at is innate immunity. Innate immunity is the body's earliest lines of defense against any and all pathogens. It would include the skin, which is a barrier to pathogens entering the bloodstream, different secretions that the body produces. Some of them trap microorganisms entering the respiratory and digestive tracts, such as mucus, which is a barrier to pathogens. Other secretions, some contain lysosomes and break down the cell walls of some bacteria. Sweat, tears, and saliva are all secretions that do this, that contain lysosome. The body also, another innate immunity response is the inflammatory response. So if pathogens end up getting past the skin and secretion barriers, the body has an inflammatory response. It's characterized by redness, swelling, pain, heat, and it is when the damaged tissue cells release histamine. Histamine dilates blood vessels to make them more permeable to tissue fluid and enables the body to heal that area and bring necessary cells and components to that area to deal with infection or whatever may be going on there. Phagocytes are white blood cells that destroy pathogens by surrounding and engulfing them. So when they destroy a virus, incidentally, phagocytes are themselves destroyed if the virus multiplies within it. Here are just some examples of different types of white blood cells. There are quite a few different kinds of white blood cells. Now let's look at a different kind of immunity. It is acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is defending against a specific pathogen by gradually building up a resistance to it. So antibodies are involved in acquired immunity. Antibodies are also, sometimes you'll see the word immunoglobulin. That's just another word for an antibody. Antibodies, here's an example. They are Y-shaped proteins. They're produced by a type of cell, B cells, and they identify with and neutralize bacteria and viruses. And they do this by recognizing an antigen on the foreign target. So an antibody is specific for a particular antigen. If this is the antibody, and it would have these antigen binding sites, it is going to fit to a particular antigen, and in this case it fits with that antigen on whatever the foreign target is. So antibodies are very, very specific for the antigen, which exists on the outside of the cell of the foreign or the foreign material. A vaccine works with the acquired immunity system by being injected into the body and causing an immune response. A vaccine itself is a substance that consists of either weakened, dead, or incomplete portions of a pathogen or an antigen. They cause this immune response when they're injected into the body, and they produce immunity by prompting the body to react as if it were naturally infected. And then it has a chance to produce these antibodies, and the infection is no longer a threat to that individual. And just incidentally, in the 1770s, the very first safe vaccine was used for cowpox, which is a disease very similar to smallpox. Let's look at one last item in the immune system category, and that's AIDS. AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. And now you know where the acquired immune portion of that word comes from and what that means. HIV is strongly associated with AIDS. HIV is the human immunodeficiency virus. It's the pathogen responsible for the disease. It consists of 2 copies of RNA wrapped in proteins and then wrapped in a lipid coat. The outer proteins of the HIV virus attach to a T cell receptor. T cells are part of the acquired immunity system. T cells recognize and bind to antigens, so they're very important in the immune system. This HIV virus penetrates the T cell, and it can remain inactive there for some period of time. The virus uses its RNA, however, in the T cell to synthesize viral DNA. And then the majority of individuals infected with HIV end up developing AIDS. And HIV virus is passed via direct blood-to-blood contact. So the way it can be passed would be through direct blood transfusions, contaminated IV needles that are used again. Intimate sexual contact also transfers the HIV virus. And probably most of you know a lot of these symptoms. An example of something you could do for further research and advanced proficiency, you can look into more about the HIV and AIDS, the AIDS syndrome and HIV virus, and look into what the current research is on that. That I talk a little bit more about that on the next page, so let's go to the next frame. You could look at current treatments for AIDS, then prognosis, what that is now, and what is being used. Also, you could research specific pathogens. There are many out there. Pick a few that would be interesting to you. How are they transmitted? What are symptoms of infection? What's the prognosis for these diseases? Research antibody immunity and more detailed specifics of its mechanisms. What is epidemiology? What are the goals, practices, examples of successes and failures in this area of study? So I look forward to seeing what you come up with, and I'll see you in class.